I give the CIA a total credit for sponsoring and initiating the entire consciousness movement, counterculture events of the 1960s.
Welcome back to Rise to Liberty podcast. We have a very special show today. I have Heidi Luv of the Unfiltered Rise podcast joining us today. How are you doing today, Heidi?
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. And as you were rolling your opening, I'm like, maybe we should talk about some more conspiracy related stuff that I've been throwing out there on X.
Yeah, I would love to. So
that's a good one. Yeah.
So just to dive straight into it, who are you? What's your show about? Like, why should people care?
Right. Yeah. I'm Heidi Luv of the Unfiltered Rise. I'm everywhere podcasts are served. And I do have a ton of work on Spotify. I started into this because I'm an ex-Mormon. And I was I was led to do this. And I know that sounds funny, but I never thought I would do this. I never thought I would be in this position, but here I am. And contrary to all beliefs, I don't hate Mormons. I'm actually trying to help them. Right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, you know how that goes as an ExMo. Once you leave, they want you just don't say anything.
Right. Exactly. So you're ex-Mormon. Were you raised in the church? Or did your family convert? Like what's the story there?
So I am descendant of the handcart companies, clear back. I have a lot of very strange family ties that don't make a lot of sense. I bring them up and people say funny things about it because they think I'm trying to flex on royalty, but there's some royalty there and it doesn't make sense, right? Like
right.
People have royal people in their lines, but mine is really strange. And I'm like, oh, okay, this guy just came here to be a poor Mormon when he was making whole towns over in South Africa. That makes sense.
Right.
He's from the Stewart line. It's Henry Stewart Talbot. And people will recognize that name because there's a big conspiracy behind him, that he's the illegitimate son of the king. And
right.
I don't know. I mean, I wasn't there. So but I find it interesting. For sure.
So you're ex-Mormon, which means you've left the church.
Yes.
What kind of started all of that? Like where did you start recognizing things to where you didn't want to be a part of the faith anymore? And what ultimately made you cross that line, I guess?
Boy, it took me a really long time. I didn't completely leave until I was
Oh.
7 years old. I started having doubts around 34. I didn't do the smart thing and bail early. I went through the temple. I got married in the temple. I did the whole thing. And I think that really was my first crack in everything because I was like, what in the earth are we doing here? This seems
going
really
through the
weird.
temple.
Yeah. Yep. It was weird. And, after that, I had a real life or death situation. I had thyroid cancer. Nothing will bring you to a quick decision, like possibly maybe you might not make it. It was already pretty advanced.
Right.
And so, yeah, I had to make that decision. It did cost me my family. So yeah, it was hard.
So what were the things that you started noticing that had you questioning? I mean, because, from the outside looking in, a lot of people won't see this. Even if you're on the inside of the Mormon bubble, as I like to call it, a lot of people don't notice certain things.
Right. No, I didn't either. I probably wouldn't have. The only thing was the temple ritual was so strange that it didn't correlate with everything that you've ever been told, right? Since we're little tiny kids, we're singing about going to the temple someday and, we get handkerchiefs and young women's about take this with you to the temple and it's the most special, wonderful place. And I got there and went, yep, that wasn't special or wonderful. That was weird and seemed like not good. You know, that whole intuition we talked before we went live about gut feelings or whatever.
Right.
Utter panic. I did it a few more times as far as the whole thing. I mean, I guess for the first 2 years I was pretty good, but it was just something that I didn't like. My grandma, you'll get used to it. And I didn't get used to it. I didn't like it. And it wasn't just the tediousness or the length of it. A lot of people complain about weird stuff like that. I felt like this was not right. And like it had nothing to do with God, really.
Right.
The story of Genesis type stuff, but it was perverted and different. And
right.
Yeah, I knew something was up, and thank heavens my mom, she had already gotten out of the church. So I do have my mom in my life. My dad didn't disown me. He just had passed away now. So, but everybody else in my extended family, my grandma, all uncles and aunts, everybody, like when there's a funeral, it's the worst because like I have to go and yeah, they treat me like a leper. I sit in the corner,
right.
you know.
Right.
It's
You're
great.
the black sheep now.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, that's fine. But also the Christianity that they portray is not what they practice. And so I'm not saying for everyone, you know, there's a lot of good people in that church, but they don't know the top level of things. They don't want to know their history. They're happy where they are.
Right. So one thing I want to touch on just to cut this off in the very beginning. So anyone who has known or even just seen a lot of ExMos or ex-Mormons, it seems like they have a direct like vendetta, you know. It's like they leave the church and all of a sudden their entire life is, you know, getting revenge, or at least that's what it seems like. And you had mentioned that your whole point is to try and help the people within the church. And so do you want to kind of take a minute and explain what you mean by that? Explain like where you're coming from. So, you know, that's just taken care of right out of the gate. And so people don't have to, you know, speculate.
I wasn't a lazy learner. I wasn't a Jack Mormon. I wasn't wanting to drink. I still don't do that. I didn't want to go live a earthly life and not, you know, obey the scriptures. In fact, I think I'm more Christian now than I ever was. But all these questions are going to get chucked, you know, oh, she got excommunicated or something. I'm still not excommunicated. Never did anything. I mean, I guess I'm going to have to ex myself. Like,
right.
I don't know. I thought they would by now, but because I'm a heretic. Right. But the big thing is for me is as I started delving into the things that I felt it was very heavy on my spirit to do certain things. And it was against everything I believed. I had this feeling like, oh, you should be studying this book or this, like John D. And people are like, oh, she's in the occult. Like, look at this. No. There are answers in there that you're never going to get anywhere else. Now, does that mean everybody needs to read that entire book? No. That's why we consolidate things for people to consume so that they don't have to do that, right? That's not everyone's calling. But I do feel it was my calling to see like, oh, why does this align with Joseph Smith? And why does Crowley talk about Joseph Smith? And why are these things? So, you know, as I started going down this, I was kind of frightened, to be honest. I still don't have any Crowley books in my house, but I study it online. And it's not a comfortable thing, I would say, for me. But I see the parallels, and I've done a bunch of episodes on different things like that. But ultimately, you know, this is a religion that is leading people away from God. Now, do I think there's a better religion? I really don't. I don't. I think the Bible is true. I know it is. And I think that men whenever they gather people and become consumers of tithing and money and all this stuff, absolute power corrupts absolutely. It does it every single time. And so, I pick on the Mormons because I was one, but the Catholics are no different. There's lots of sects, okay, like the Process Church.
Right.
There's all kinds of things that happen because of radical beliefs and gathering of those beliefs. That's
Right.
what happens.
Right.
Yeah. So
And so would it be fair to say that you're not like intentionally just trying to shit all over them because you're an ExMo? Like there's actual like substance to what you're saying, and you're trying to bring that to light.
I think I went
to kind of expose.
I went about it actually for myself. I went about it trying to figure out what I had done in the temple. Like, What is this really? Like, what was this? Is this, masonry, which, yeah. Okay. Is this devil worship? I don't know. Is this Celtic stuff? I don't know. So I wanted to understand like the things that I didn't understand. And that's where I approached it, because I wanted to repent for it. And you can't repent for something if you don't know what you did. And so you have to know. And did I take it to an extreme level? Sure. I started wondering things and started questioning things. And I had things like placed on my heart, like, oh, what is this? But I always give this analogy. People say, well, just leave it alone. You left, so leave it alone,
Right.
And I'm like, okay, so if you were, on a boat and you had the only raft and you made it out, would you watch everyone drown? I wouldn't.
Right.
I wouldn't.
That's a great analogy, honestly.
Yeah.
So
I couldn't do that. Yeah.
The reason why I wanted to just get that kind of out of the way, because I know for a fact that there's going to be at least one person somewhere that says, oh, she's just a hater. Oh, she's bitter, whatever it may be. But this isn't a bash session just to, bash for the sake of bashing. This is you have actually done your homework on this. These are things that you feel that need to be out there. And I do as well, obviously, because you're here.
Yes. And the people in the middle, sadly, are, just fodder for their fire, because they don't understand. They are using them. And that is sadness to me. Like, to me, if the Mormon Church would come out tomorrow, or the LDS, I'll say Mormon because I'm almost 50, and that's, I was raised, we were Mormon. And proud to be Mormon under that prophet. But, I see this and I think these poor people, like my grandma or my family that's very devout still, they don't know. They don't know what's happening at this top level, and they keep that secret for a reason. Now, anytime you're holding a secret, whether it's yourself internally or in a group, it makes people kind of sick, like secrecy causes that. It can. And even if you're not certain that, like, oh, this is just something we do, but why is that? Like, why is there so much secrecy if you have nothing to hide?
Right.
Like, yeah. So it's not the middleman. I always feel actually very bad for the people in the church that are living by the word, just trying to go to heaven, because that's what they're doing.
Right.
And they don't know. I didn't know what a Mason was when I went through and wore the symbols on my chest for years and years and years. I didn't even know. I didn't know what a square and compass was. So I feel like that's very unfair. It's one of the few religions that kind of does that to them. And they're initiates of ancient mysteries. They have no idea what I'm talking about. And that's sad to me. If they came out tomorrow and said the truth. Yeah. Yeah. If they would tell the truth, I would probably shut up.
Right.
Because then the truth, but you don't know. And you're just in there. And when people ask me, well, why did you do that? Well, that's what we did. Like, that's what my grandma did. And, all these people. And so there was no answer. I don't like that. Even if you're a Freemason, you will be lied to, because everyone knows that. They hoodwink you, right? And in the Mormon Church, they don't do that. You don't ever get the truth unless you make it to the top. then
Right.
maybe if you're in
There's
Eccles.
so the one thing that, because I myself am also an ex-Mormon, although I don't typically put that label on myself, but the issue that I have, I guess the biggest gripe I have about the religion itself is that there is zero questioning of authority, and which is an odd thing to me, because even in the teachings of the LDS Church, it is taught that the church is going to be targeted by evil and taken over by evil. And so what is that going to look like? So, even outside of, arguing whether the faith is this or that, it's like at some point the teachings tell you that the church is a target by evil or Satan, or however you want to categorize it, and that the church will be taken over.
Yes.
So,
yep. Secret combinations. It's all over the Book of Mormon if you read it.
Right. And so, asking current members, what is that going to look like, and how will you know? Because there's also other teachings that say you don't question the prophet, and you just kind of accept it. And that's the issue I have, or at least the big issue, right? It's like, if I had to pinpoint one thing, it's kind of weird because, right, questioning a prophet, if it's genuinely a prophet, why would you question him? But at the same time, it's like, how do you know that's a true prophet?
What did Joseph Smith do? Right. What I love that we read scriptures about being like the prophet. And what was he doing? He was questioning authority when he went out and did that,
right. 100%. And he was questioning all different types of authority at that time, which was one of the reasons, he put a target on his back. So, yeah, this I think got amplified during COVID when you saw the church, tell members to get the experimental vaccine, which is not a vaccine, but, experimental gene editing. And like, that just seemed to me to be evil. Why would that be a big contention for the church? And
because they own all the labs.
Right. Well, and why would they also go along with the state shutting down churches and everything? I just, to me, that did not seem Christian. That did not, even just taking things at face value, that did not seem like the things that I was told and taught about the church when I was growing up.
You would expect, right? That you would expect from them. And like we see in the plague, like, who were the plague doctors? They were like priests,
right?
That would go help because they were all there was. And I'm not saying go sacrifice yourself, but I'm also saying that, a church has no business in your medical history. And as a nurse, I'm a registered nurse. You don't do that. You don't just willy-nilly tell people a blanket thing. Oh, it's safe. No, you don't know that. They could have all these problems and, allergies or whatever the case may be. That's a very private situation when you get to medical things. I thought that was strange. I was already on the no train because it seemed weird. And I know that's contradictory as a nurse, but I was like, this is not the way things are developed. This has never been done before. I'm not doing that. There's no such thing as dancing nurses. That's insane. So we're a spicy group. We don't dance. No, but even there's no time for that. Like, honestly, it was the weirdest. It was just a ploy. Like, I could see through it for sure. I was already out by then, but it did concern me for the welfare and the well-being of, the whole and the body of the church that continues to sustain these people that are higher up in their positions because they're paid at a certain level and they're paid well at a certain level.
Right.
Yeah.
So one thing, I assume that there's going to be at least some active Mormons that watch this. And one thing I wanted to bring up regarding this directly out of, the teachings of the church is specifically Doctrine and Covenants 21, 4-5. For anyone who doesn't know, what it says is, wherefore meaning the church, thou shalt give heed unto all his words and commandments, which he shall give unto you as he receiveth them, walking in all holiness before me. For his word ye shall receive, as if from mine own mouth, in all patience and faith. So, I mean, what this is discussing is that the prophet is going to be speaking on behalf of the Lord as if it is the Lord himself speaking. And this was pointed out to me by another mutual that we actually share. But so the instruction to the church is that in the Revelation, the Lord instructs the church to give heed to the words and commandments of the prophet Joseph Smith as he receives them, receiving as if from God. The instruction emphasizes that the prophet's words should be received as if from my own mouth. And this is strange to me, because that allows a teaching that if somebody does come in to corrupt the church, then you don't have the ability to question that. And that really bothers me.
Well, and the fact that we would not have something called the Journal of Discourses had this been upkept, like, let's be real. How many volumes is there of that? There's a lot.
Right.
And, you know, I love the catch-22 is they'll say, like Brigham Young, horribly racist. Okay.
Right.
He once said, you know, if your neighbor sinned and he needs to be killed, love your neighbor and kill him. Oh, right. Wow. Well, that's not in my scriptures. And then they'll say, well, he was just a man. Wait, I thought, like you just said, these are, you know, commandments at this point because he's the prophet of God.
Right.
No, he's just a man. So they have their cake and they eat it too. And that is a very bad position for anybody to be underneath. But they also are doing some new things. And I don't know if you've seen this, but they're shortening the temple, which is a commandment from God. Okay. For convenience. Now it's down to like an hour. You don't have to memorize anything. There's cue cards.
Really?
I've just heard, you know, this is recent. I've read articles. And they're changing the garments as they have over all the years. Right. Now, do I think that needs to happen because of, you know, moderation into a new age where clothing is different? Sure. But also these are commandments from God. So what point do we say, oh, well, that's okay to change this and these very, you know, intrinsic areas of the church, like the temple ceremony. I just feel like they take too many liberties. And if you want to be honest, the people that uphold the church to its letter of the law is the FLDS. And I hate to put that out there because I don't like what they do, but like, honestly, if you're going to get to brass tacks, they keep up to the old standard and they obey the letter to the law.
Right. So for anyone who doesn't know, the FLDS is the fundamentalist branch, I guess, although it is not like officially sanctioned by the mainstream LDS Church. I guess they, you know, denounce them as being a part of the official church. But the basic of it is that the FLDS came in and said, well, the church is changing too many things, and this is not the original teachings of Joseph Smith or, you know, what he prophesized. And so the FLDS basically just live out and practice what was the original Mormon church, based upon, you know, the teachings of Joseph Smith and or Brigham Young.
And they have volumes and volumes. If you guys want to go study this, I have multiple volumes of this, and it's called The History of the Church. And they're usually green or brown. You can go buy them at local bookstores. For me, anyway, I'm in Utah, so I don't know. Maybe it's harder for other people, but you can go in and ask for the teachings that the FLDS uses. They sell these books sometimes because they end up with people maybe that leave. I don't know how they get a hold of them, but they have them.
Right.
And I buy them and I read them because I think we need to know what is the true history here? Like, it has been obfuscated far too much. And
Right.
when we talk about the things that they want to hide, they do it for a purpose. It's not innocent.
Right.
It's just not. And it's all to, be accepted. Okay, well, they had to do it to become a state. Well, that's not what God said, though.
Right.
I mean, there's this leverage of these people that are being led. And I'm not saying I would want to be a polygamous bride. I surely would not. But
you don't want a sister wife?
The teaching. Right. It is the teaching of the church,
Right.
And so it's a hard thing to balance for sure, but also it is the word of the prophet. And
Right.
I don't know how else to say that, just like the oaths that they used to take about spilling their guts and slitting their throats. I don't know that was supposed to be removed,
Right.
Do I think it's good? No.
Let's see. I wanted
yeah.
to bring that up real quick, because that's actually something I wanted to address if we had the time, was the blood atonement, which, okay, it seems kind of weird to me that if these teachings come from, the word of God, why are they removing it later? And I get it. It's because, a different prophet comes along, times change, but that seems really convenient to me. That the faith is so adaptable like that, because just taking it at face value, then that means anyone that can get into that position has the ability to lead everyone astray.
And I dare say they have, since, people always ask me, if you had to choose between Brigham Young and Joseph Smith, like, who do you think was worse, right?
Right.
Or who would you follow if you had no other choice in the world? And definitely my answer would be Joseph Smith, because at least he believed in the things he was presenting. I truly believe he did. And I truly believe he saw something. I do. We live in a unexplainable world, right? We live in a place where John Dee talked to lots of spirits, and he thought they were angelic spirits and that they were good and that they were from God. But then we know that there is this bargain that comes along at some point, even for him, where it ends up being sexual in nature. Usually, swapping wives was the deal with his, and people give in because they want to believe something so badly that it can't possibly be evil when you're conjuring to get it here. Like, I don't think you're supposed to do that. Now, if an angel just happens to appear and you didn't conjure it there, and my mom always has a hard time with this. She's like, do you not believe in angels, like helping angels? I'm like, no, I do. But I just think that you shouldn't be conjuring things because you don't know what you got. You know.
Right. 100%. I mean, it's this is a realm in which we do not understand. And to think that you do understand is the most naive thing ever. These are powers and entities that we obviously have no control over. And so
we certainly don't control interdimensional beings. Like, that's crazy. Like, you might bring it here. You might be able to do that. What happens to you afterward? It's never been good for any of them. Any of them.
Well, and the idea of conjuring something to begin with is very occultish. That to me does not seem Christian. And this is coming from an ex-Satanist. It's not It's not Christian to
your point.
Do such a thing.
I think I would love to share my screen, because I would like to share some of the things that I found along my way that I absolutely agree. They are not Christian. And that is the problem with the whole thing. Am I saying that you cannot ever have, any kind of angelic help or whatever? No, I'm just saying, like, you have to be really careful. We see it time and time again. Every single time one of these things is channeled, they want people to write a book It's just
Right.
part of what happens. And it happened with Crowley, and it happened with John Dee, and it happened with Joseph Smith, and it happened with all of them. And I find that almost fascinating, right? Like, I mean, at some level, you have to step back and go, what's happening here? You know?
Right.
And people will say, well, how did Joseph Smith conjure anything? I don't know if you can see this, but this is one of his layman's. This is the Joseph Smith family parchments. They're verified his. You guys can look this up. This is called the Jehovah parchment. And I'm sorry, but the characters on this parchment, if we just go with that, if we just go with what you're seeing on the screen, they come from a witchcraft book.
Right.
So this is either Sibley's Book of Witchcraft or the Magus or the Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So, I mean,
where they're from.
these are what's known as sigils or sigils. Sigil magic is very entry level, but it is incredibly powerful. And I mean, it's not exclusive to any one belief. It's actually been practiced all over the world. And for those who don't know, it's basically a self-manifestation. And so when you do these designs, you put the energy or the intention into it, and that's how they work. And oh boy, they work. They
Right.
wholeheartedly
Right.
work.
That Solomonic magic, 100% on these. And
Yes.
people don't understand that the two forms of magic that I've ever seen in all of the studies I've done on the occult were even magicians. So you'll be able to answer this, shy away, okay, and say, ooh, that's a little scary. Enochian, which is John Dee's magic, which is
Right.
very present in Joseph Smith's life, or Solomonic magic, which is sigil magic, which
Correct.
is Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon. So I find it fascinating that even now people will say, you better be careful with that.
Right. Right.
And so,
And here's the thing is my understanding, regardless of who you think you're contacting, it's not who you think you're contacting. It is whatever entity picks it up first. At least that's how I always understood it to be. Now you can use certain symbols and, rituals to bring about certain things so you can get a type of entity, but you never know exactly what entity you're bringing. And I'll tell you, if you have to conjure it, it is not a good entity.
well, and it's probably lower level because it, like you said, it's whoever gets the ping, and the lower level
Right.
entities are far, far closer to us as human
Right.
beings. This isn't going to be the Archangel Michael. It's not.
Right. Right.
Even if you say you want to conjure that person, it's,
Right.
you know what? God sends angels when he sees fit, and angels don't like you. So here's something that is very important to learn. We are the shitty little brother of the angels. Okay. And,
Right.
and we got given the birthright basically, and they don't like you. And so
Right.
I don't think you should ever conjure an angel personally, ever. I wouldn't conjure anything, but definitely angels are not going to be happy, because when you do this, and you like this particular sigil, this is part of Joseph Smith's, sigil magic. I believe this one is on the Jupiter talisman, and people will say he had this to protect himself. And I'm like, that's not what it says.
Right.
So it says, whoso beareth this, about him, all spirits shall obey him. But actually, when you go to the real breakdown of it, it says those who conjure. And I'm like, there it is. Right. You have to obey because it was conjured here. It wasn't just popping up like all natural and it just showed up here. That's
Right.
not what happened. Yeah.
Right.
And they want to make us believe that, that's the story, because it does sound way better. Like
It really does. It really does.
It's not good to have to explain why Joseph Smith did not die with his garments on, but he did die with this on his person. That's kind of a problem when we're talking about belief. And this is, the third pentacle, which, as you can see, and I'm sure you know, but for audience sake, is here. It's very lightly engraved, and people can look this up, but it's old. That's why it's so faded. But it says, "This defendeth and protecteth those who invoke and cause the spirits to come when they appear, then show them this, and they will obey." Well, okay, that doesn't mean it just happened because somebody's cursing you and they're chucking spirits at you. Do I think that happens? Yes, I do.
Correct.
But
it does.
I think this is explaining to this specific sigil what is happening. He's invoking. And when you start learning about Solomonic magic or Martinism, which I do think explains way more than Scottish Rite Masonry, which every time I bring it up, people are like, but it's not that. Okay.
Right.
Well, on that seal that I just showed you, did you see this? Because it was there, right?
Correct.
It's on the Jupiter talisman. And it's interesting to me that people will say, well, this Martinist order is this, Saint Martin. I did a whole episode on it, but they'll say, oh, this is from the heart. And I'm like, okay, that's true for one of these three people. Willermose, Cagliostro, and Saint Martin all made this order. Now, Saint Martin went on and it became more of a learning. And he says it's all in the mind and in the heart. And like you said, it's more like thought, like they're not practicing it per se. But Cagliostro was down for it all, bro. Like, that's who Crowley said he came back as. So people need to know that he was a little different and he'd been to Haiti and he learned some things, And so we have to look at the whole piece of the puzzle and not just 1/3 of the puzzle when we're trying to explain this away. But they believe that 2 nights of the year, you can go out and conjure spirits. And one of those is the fall equinox and the other is the spring equinox. And this is what they dress like. And I'm sorry, that doesn't look Christian to me.
Correct.
But, maybe it's old Christian. I don't know, I don't want to judge it on its level, but I'm just saying that if I saw this and I didn't know anything, I would say they were witches and warlocks.
Right. And I mean, here is the thing, like there are some very not occultist, but very what's the word I'm thinking of? It's like there's very traditional types of Christianity. I mean, Eastern Orthodox is what comes to mind, that does have types of rituals. But what's interesting is, I mean, these things are all surrounded by Jesus. And to me, they very clearly look different. They're not, because here's the thing, is that the aesthetic is part of the whole thing, right? Like all of this is why Satanists dress a particular way when they're performing rituals. And not trying to equate the two, but trying to make the point that the aesthetic is part of it. And
it matters.
It matters way more than people would like to admit or even understand. And so,
like having a ceremonial atame or dagger.
Correct.
Why did the Smiths have this then? Why did this be passed down from the father? This is the father's birth sign, not Joseph's. So, when we're talking about these seals, okay, or what's written on them, intelligence of Mars, does that sound scary? No. What does it mean? An intelligence in this particular magical system is a demon. It's a lower level demon. So why are you putting that on your atame? And why is it dark handled if it's a white magical? Right. Because it is darker. So, and it's stained. You can see that it is. Okay.
Correct.
So when we look at that, and even the fact that Joseph had, and people don't like to talk about this either, the seer stone, one was dark and one was white. Well, I bet you were like, oh, I know why that is, because you've been down that magical road, right? So when we look at these things, this is the dark one. Okay. And the white one has never been photographed, but we do have an artist's rendition of it, and it is here. Now, which one is more important? This has never been even photographed.
Right.
Hello.
Right.
And so the properties of this, I'm assuming they're quartz or some such thing. Like, and I'm sure the other one has obsidian in it. Again, we get back to John D with all of the magical, things that we know, right?
Right.
And I'm not going to say he was per se wrong. I'm just saying it's not Christian. That's
right.
all. If you want to practice, go ahead. See what happens.
So something for people who might not know. What's interesting about this is magicians or wizards. I hate using that term, but I mean, it is what it is. What is interesting is that there are, like protection spells and stuff like this. And although you were still dabbling in the occult, what is interesting is a seasoned magician can take something meant for good and flip it around and use it. And I'm saying not literally flip it around, but they can invert the good for the bad. So even working from saying, okay, all of this stuff was on the up and up in the beginning with Joseph Smith, he was the light of God or whatever, and he spoke to God, and it is all, in the light. Anyone that comes after him, if they have the intention to do so, can take the very same things and use it for evil. So,
well, and to your point, like, here's the thing. I think that he was a magician. I have a lot of backing for this. I know that his great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather, maybe even one more great, was, in Salem, Massachusetts, and involved in the Inquisition, and he was an accuser of a witch, which a lot of
I did
times,
not know that.
Yes. So Mary Eastie, let me go to that really quick. So Mary Eastie was accused by Samuel Smith Sr. There are two. Samuel Smith II, you will find, and he will be like Captain Samuel Smith. And so it'll look different. But this lady here was accused, and I like to show this so that people know, because this is a deposition. This isn't Heidi making up baloney. From the Salem archives, of Samuel Smith. And he talks about her, Mary Eastie, and how he believed that she pushed him, even though, she wasn't anywhere around him. He just felt it. Okay. Right. And she once said that he was rude. And if you've ever read anything about some of the Smiths, you might laugh about that. And said to me that I would have you be so rude in discourse, for I might rue it in the hereafter, and that I was so basically going to get it. Okay. He was about a mile from her house, and he felt a shove on his shoulder from which he knows not. So he didn't see her, nothing. But this hung this woman, and she swore that she was innocent. And funny enough, she was hung on the day that Joseph Smith got those plates 100 and something years later. I'm not kidding.
Interesting.
So that is a funny situation where we know how much, how many problems there were with Joseph, with the family. They also say they were poor. Now, this is kind of a grainy picture, but this is the house. Look how nice. He was a Topsfield, Massachusetts selectman. His son was a captain. He was involved in the Boston Tea Party. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not.
Yes, these people were very important. And this is the father. So Samuel Smith II is the father of Azael, which is his grandpa. I love that name. Oh boy. So they were known to possibly be the ones practicing alchemy and such things. And in fact, there's some amazing books out there about Joseph Smith, the scientist. And I do believe he was extremely smart. Yeah. And his mother was a lay midwife, and most people don't know that. But she was also from a very, very upstanding family. In fact, I just learned this not very long ago. And I don't have my slide for this because it just happened like a couple days ago. But in the book from Bushman on the history of the church, there is an excerpt there saying that Lydia Gates comes from Deacon Gates, and he is related to Bill Gates. Now, if you look up if Lydia was related, it says no. But if you look up if Bill Gates was related, it says he sure was. And so, yeah, it's obfuscated all the way around. I find it very interesting when we know the pedigree and these lines. And of course, people will say, well, they're all related, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, they went to an awful lot of trouble to hide that fact. Okay.
Right. And that's when it becomes suspicious, is when things start getting hid, because it's why, if it's not that big of a deal, why do you want it hidden?
Why hide it? Yeah. Right. What are you doing? Right. But here we are. And they also obfuscate the brother, and I'm going to be doing a show on that. But it's very interesting all the way around. These people's history is important. I believe they obfuscate this whole family because it sounds much better if they're dumb farmers that don't know anything than having them be select topsmen of a very nice area, Also, just so people know, why would he do this, right? Well, John Gould's sister was John Wilde's deceased wife. Well, the Goulds were fighting over land, and the Putnams were kind of in with the Goulds, and the Goulds are actually the Smiths in-laws. And so that's why. I mean, it's just the way it is. So they're related. And this is why I think the church probably hides this. I also love that this little excerpt says they mined for precious metals for over 100 years in Topsfield. And what did I say about the alchemy? So, I mean, I think that they were very smart. Like I said, they were top like level people in this family. And so I think that they didn't like the scandal that this brought to them, literally that was the nail in her coffin. And she did say that she petitioned. She was one of the only people that petitioned to the governor and everything and said, I know I have to die, but I'm begging you, do not keep taking all of this nonsense from people just saying that, they had a dream. I mean, like, get real actual evidence and stop hanging people. And they did. Because of her petition, they stopped killing people and stopped using, madness, basically, to put people away. They did this to a 4-year-old child and imprisoned her for a year. I mean, like, this is the kind of thing that's happening at this time. It was just wild. So, see the date, September 22nd. So Joseph Smith set out on the 21st, and he did receive the plates after midnight because he talked to his family about that. So, very interesting. I think it's fantastic when we deep dive into history and find things that are completely unexpected. I didn't know any of this. I was just doing a deep dive for something else, and it came up, of course, which is so strange for me, like in general, when that happens, because I wasn't trying to find that at all. And so here's the excerpt I like to show about Samuel Smith. This is the second. He was a selectman, a legislative representative, committee of correspondence member, and he was a selectman for Topsfield, Massachusetts. He also was involved in the Boston Tea Party and making that whole like idea of them to like go and do this. He didn't go. But like this was, they sat down at the table and brought up this. Isn't that funny that like we see this play out later with the Mormons and the Mormon massacre there? They did what at the Boston Tea Party? They dressed up as Native Americans, and so did the people later. Right. It's almost like that's a thing for them. Reused and repurposed. So for those who aren't like in the know, can you kind of like wrap this up with like what exactly are the implications
of these revelations?
So, when we look at the things and the people that influenced, Joseph, like Walters, the magician, who had strange books and deals with familiar spirits and was chased out of town. Now, this is in the Palmyra Reflector, June 12th, 1830. And, the Book of Mormon was published in March of 1830. So when we look at this stuff and the teachers that Joseph had in his life, when we look at the family history, when we look at the things that are very unusual in the temple, in the temple ceremony, or when we look at Joseph's cane with the serpent head and the upside down weird cross, like, I'm just telling you, maybe there's more than meets the eye there. Maybe the church, and I know this is hard for people, could lie to you. These penalties and oaths were very strange. The true order of prayer is very strange. And when I say very strange, I mean, I always chuck this in here. You'll recognize this, I'm sure. This is Typhon, when you're hailing to Typhon, which is a chaos, deity.
Right.
And we look at the true order of prayer from the temple, and we can look at that on this. Look at the thumb.
Right.
So, the occulted faces of the women doesn't happen anymore. There's been changes. I understand that, but there's
a bunch of changes in the 80s, like some of the first big changes. And to my understanding, one of the reasons why was largely because people started having flashbacks, for lack of a better term. There were major issues all the way throughout the church, so across the country and across the world, that there were people were having flashbacks of really terrible abuse that they had suffered as children when they were going through the ceremony in the temple. And that was some of the largest or some of the first changes that were made back in the late 80s, early 90s. There were things that were removed due to people remembering really terrible abuse that they had suffered, that they repressed through, DID.
Right.
And dissociative identity disorder, for anyone who is unaware. And it's kind of interesting. Why would the ceremonies continually bring up past memories of something that they had experienced of traumatic abuse? Because I mean, this should be a thing that's bringing you closer to God. And then you remember the abuse you suffered as a child. That's incredibly odd.
I had a very abusive childhood, and so I do think this affected me. And sorry, I moved my chair earlier when I looked backward to get this. I probably made noise. But John Krakauer wrote this book, and this is currently a show on Hulu under the banner of heaven. Okay. And this is what I believe changed the church. This happened right at the same time frame, like almost identically. And this woman, because these men decided to do a true obedience to the school of the prophets, almost had her head cut off, and her child as well. And I have spoken to the surviving husband. He will not come on. And he just says, it doesn't matter. I was with him for 3 hours, and he told me the whole story. And I was just shocked. I begged him to come on and say his piece and set the record straight, because he got accused, first of all. And he said, it doesn't matter. People have already made their judgment of me. But I do believe some of this stuff affected it, this old stuff. He's still an LDS member, so I'm sure that's why he doesn't want to talk about it. But I will tell you, some of this book is true. And to his account, he says some of it is not true, like about his parents and stuff. So I like to give that little disclaimer for people watching the show or whatnot. But it did alter the people's minds so aggressively, just like we see now with like Ballard and how weird he got, and like Lori Vallow and how weird she
Right.
got. And we see these people utterly flip a switch from like, oh, she's the normal mom next door, to completely crazy and burying her kids in the front yard. Okay. Or
Right.
backyard. I think it was the front yard. Anyway, whatever. And so we see this flip. And what is it exactly in these teachings that is so powerful that people would be okay with killing their family? Okay.
Right.
Well, you know, this gets into blood atonement. Yes, I know Brigham Young was never proven to give the order, but he sure talked a lot about it. We know it was carried out. Can we prove it was back to him? Like, they were smarter than that. The Danites took
Right.
care of stuff. The Brighamites took care of stuff. But we know that this was part of their teachings, okay? And we
Right.
used to symbolize this. And why does the temple bring this stuff back? Well, I'll tell you a little bit of what I think. I think that because they do not prepare us for what we're going to see when we go into it. And we are extremely naive, and we think it's going to be this happy thing. And then our mind gets rocked, right? And back in the day, to put these people in this mindset, they would actually, and they've proven this with Joseph, they were alchemists. Like, I'm sorry, they were making the anointing oil,
Right.
and it had properties in it that would make people have visions or whatnot. So now we don't have that. We don't use drugs, and we don't partake of sacred drugs for this kind of stuff. So what do they do? What else can you do to make a person have an intense reaction? Well, you can scare the shit out of them. You can
Right.
put them in a very cold place, not cold, but like a sterile environment, and show them something and get them like, you know, focused on something they don't understand, and have them feel confused and have all these weird things happen where it alters you in your mind. And I think that is what happened to me, because I do have an extensive abuse background.
Right.
I was abused by my stepfather. And so when we look at that, we know that I'm not the only one, right? Lots of these people have gone into fight or flight mode at that time, and it's changed their life, either to make them the most devout believer ever, or make them want to run out of the building, or
Right.
somewhere in between. Okay. Bringing up old memories, pushing them back down. But we do know it intensely affects people. And there's
Right.
nothing we can say that changes that, you know. We have to look at the fact that is something that, like you said, it could have maybe been used for good, but now they're harnessing it, right? They're not. Do you think they give a crap about these people that are going through where they're not even teaching them the mysteries anymore? They're just pushing them through like cattle, and hurry and go and do your thing. And so we can be here on Thursday night and not look like weirdos when we're here, right? Doing
Right.
whatever we're going to do. And also, you know, if you do get it right, we're going to harness that energy from you, and we're going to use it. And what is necromancy? Ultimately, the necromancy of people is used for three things. If you look it up on the internet, it will say
Right.
it's for prophesying, it's for having knowledge, and sight, right? Like divine sight. And what is our prophet? A prophet, seer, and revelator.
Right. So
I don't know.
for what's on the screen for the blind viewers, as I like to call them, the people that listen just to the audio version. I just think it's a little funny, tongue in cheek. But I have the Wikipedia page brought up for the blood atonement. What this is, the blood atonement was a practice in the history of Mormonism, still adhered to by some fundamentalist splinter groups, under which the atonement of Jesus does not redeem an eternal sin. To atone for an eternal sin, the sinner should be killed in a way that allows their blood to be shed upon the ground as a sacrificial offering, so they do not become a son of perdition. The largest Mormon denomination, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or LDS Church, has denied the validity of the doctrine since 1889, with early church leaders referring to it as fiction, and later church leaders referring to it as a theoretical principle that had never been implemented in the LDS Church. That may be true. However, I mean, there is evidence of this actually happening. And as Heidi said, there is, of course, argument whether Brigham Young actually had ever ordered this, or if other church leaders had. However, there is factual evidence that it did happen.
Yes, John D. Lee actually gives real testimony to this, which is the adopted son of Brigham Young. And he speaks about the Anderson case in Cedar City with an S-E-N, Anderson. And he speaks about in 1857 that also the Mountain Meadows Massacre was a part of the blood atonement doctrine. So multiple accounts. And also, we are one of the last states that upheld being shot at a firing range so their blood could be spilled onto the ground.
Right.
Oh.
Which I actually believe is one of the reasons why the state of Utah still has the firing squad as a means for state execution. I don't know how anyone wouldn't know this, but the LDS Church has a lot of sway in this state. I won't directly say that, they control everything, because they don't, but they control a lot. And the things they don't control are controlled by, friends of the organization, like the UN, for instance. But
yes, it's still an option to this day. They did take it away in 2004, but it was reinstated in 2015 due to the lack of lethal injection drugs. Okay.
Right. Which is very strange. And I do believe, there's a lot of this stuff that has actually, been turned into, what it says here, that it's, theoretical. Because the thing about this, about magic in general, is that you actually don't have to perform an actual ritual like that. You can perform it theoretically, or just put the intent behind it in, a ritual, and it can still have the same effect. And so they don't actually have to spill the blood of the innocent, or who they view as guilty, for it to have the same purpose these days. Also, it's a little hard to slit the throats of somebody and let their blood spill out on the ground and get away with that. So
yes, and for people that want to look it up, Brigham Young in the Journal of Discourses, Volume 6, page 219 and 220, speaks about if you love your neighbor, love him as you would love yourself. That means if he needs his blood spilled, spill it. So I mean, I don't know. It's very literal, it's very scary. The wickedness and ignorance of nations forbid the principle being in full force, but the time will come when the law of God will be in full force again. This is loving our neighbor as ourselves. Help him if he wants salvation to spill his own blood on the earth in order that he may be saved. In all capitals, spill it.
Right.
I mean, that's pretty extreme wordage, So it's also why they had the Native Americans at the Mountain Meadows Massacre, because you can only lose your second anointing if you spill the blood of the innocent on accident. Even it still counts against you. So they weren't sure of the ages of the children, so they brought them in, the Native Americans, to make sure they didn't have to kill the children, just in case they were innocent.
So this is something I had sent to me with some work that I have been doing on another case, the David Hambling case. This is actually a speech that was given by Ezra Taft Benson back on February 26, 1980. And it's the 14 fundamentals in following the prophet. And this is where he lays out what is required of, good good church members, the requirements for them to, practice in order to follow the prophet correctly according to Scripture. Now, there's one part that I wanted to bring up directly, which is number 4 out of the 14 fundamentals. And the 4th is, the prophet will never lead the church astray. President Wilford Woodruff stated, quote, "I say to Israel, the Lord will never permit me or any other man who stands as president of the church to lead you astray. It is not in the program. It is not in the mind of God." End quote. The discourses of Wilford Woodruff, selected by G. Homer Duran, Salt Lake City Bookcraft, 1946, pages 212 through 213. And this edition, along with it, I found incredibly interesting. President Marion G. Romney tells of this incident which happened to him. Quote, "I remember years ago when I was a bishop, I had President Heber J. Grant talk to our ward. After the meeting, I drove him home. Standing by me, he put his arm over my shoulder and said, 'My boy, you always keep your eye on the president of the church. And if he ever tells you to do anything, and it is wrong, and you do it, the Lord will bless you for it.' Then, with a twinkle in his eye, he said, 'But you do not need to worry. The Lord will never let his mouthpiece lead the people astray.'" And this is from a conference speech, in conference report, October 1960, page 78, for anyone who wants to go find the source. This is one of the most troubling things I think I have ever read out of the teachings. So even if, once again, you take the starting position that all of this is on the up and up, this is Ezra Taft Benson, who was prophet, right? He comes out and says that the Lord will never allow a prophet to lead the church astray. But even if they do lead you astray, the Lord will not fault you for it, because all you were doing is being a good little soldier. And I just cannot think of anything more fundamentally wrong. And I think this is where we see a huge change in the church, is in the 80s. Because about 10 years after this is when the Pace memo drops.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that the LDS Church is known for outside of the Mormon bubble is the massive problem with child abuse. Obviously, this is not a recent development. I believe that this is kind of baked into a lot of things that have happened. But now, with this teaching, this is a part of it. Yeah. And for anyone who doesn't know, the Pace memo, obviously we're not going to read the whole thing here. I do implore people to go find it on your own. But it details abuse from members themselves, and very, very graphic abuse. Although it doesn't,
satanic in nature, so they say.
Directly satanic. So this is something that is an official document. This regarding ritualistic child abuse. And I just find that interesting that after a prophet comes out and says, even if a prophet leads you astray, it is not astray, and you should just listen to them anyways. I don't know any reasonable person that would ever listen to something like that and say that that's okay.
Right. No, it's dangerous. This is dangerous. This is no different than Germany.
Right.
It's not.
Right. And this is literal brainwashing, to the point that, let's call it for what it is. They're telling you that regardless of if it's good or bad, it's good. Mm-hmm. dangerous mentality to have. And my hope for anyone that's still in the faith is that if there were, a bad direction, that you would actually call it out, because that is not Christ-like. And even if people are great and all, this allows people within the church to do the most horrible things. And this is why I like to have these conversations. This is why I wanted you on, because regardless of what people genuinely think of the faith, there is something incredibly wrong with what it is right now. And no member should accept this as, oh, we just need to listen to the prophet. The Lord will understand if we do something bad. That is ridiculous.
No. Yeah, no. It's, and for people that think that the reach of the church isn't something to worry about, first of all, you just mentioned brainwashing. Why do they like us, at the Mormon level to become 3-letter agency people? Because half of the work is done, for them. And, history is a funny thing. I wanted to tell you this before I went. This week, as I delve more into Mormon history and the beginnings of BYU and all these different things, okay? I already brought up to you the Gates connection, but I would like to bring up to you one more, and so that people can clearly understand how far this goes, because it's far. There is somebody named Carl G. Mazer, Maesser. Okay. And he came out here to help be the first principal, quote unquote, of the church. Okay. He's also the family line of Peter Thiel.
Oh.
So,
okay.
And it goes much bigger than this. It goes down a rabbit hole that I couldn't have concocted with my greatest energies. Okay.
Right.
And I happened to post it on X and it went crazy, and people were so helpful, like bringing their chips to the table, and everybody was just doing this big dump on what we did know. Okay. What we did have, not to hurt anyone, but you brought up Romney, and Romney's Bain Capital. Do you know how it was seeded?
I do not.
With $250 million from Robert Maxwell.
Oh, Robert Maxwell. We have to
be concerned, especially knowing that the LDS Church was originally funded by the Rothschilds in 1850. Right. So these things have not gone away, and there is a much bigger rabbit hole. Like, I was so blown away. In fact, I have so many screenshots on my phone right now from the ones I did, from the ones people sent me, the people on X are amazing researchers, honestly.
Right.
And also it goes to Solomare Capital, which should sound familiar. It's, invested in Ukrainian businesses. Like, this goes crazy. So when we talk about your nicest neighbor ever, you might want to be concerned about their portfolio.
Right.
Because, one of the articles of faith for us is that we believe that there will be a literal gathering of Israel. Do you remember this?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Yep. And so we have to understand that the Mormons 100% support Israel. And we always have. Since I was a little kid, I was always taught this.
Right.
So it's concerning. It's concerning to know that all of these things are at play. It's way bigger than anything I could have ever imagined.
Right.
Honestly.
So the picture on the screen is Robert Maxwell with one of his 8 children. I never realized how many brothers and sisters Ghislaine had, but it's actually all sisters, I believe. But this is the father of Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's confidant, friend, lover for quite a while, and current prisoner. So, yeah, this is exactly who Robert Maxwell was. There's a lot more you can look into that and who he was, what he did. He was also the owner of Maxwell Hill, who actually produced all of the textbooks for the United States for decades.
Right. And with knowing that we know they imported this German guy, Peter Thiel's family, to do what? To bring about the education of our youth. I'm sure we're going to find the connects all over the place with those textbooks.
And have you seen what Peter Thiel has been doing lately with his speeches on the Antichrist and AI and all of these things?
It's really concerning.
Yeah. Peter Thiel is entirely obsessed with the second coming. And he also struggled to answer the question if humanity should survive. This is some death cult stuff.
This all goes back to Sabbatai Zevi. And, this whole Lyurian, I guess it is, Jewishness, that's like a whole thing.
Right.
And people have to look into that. I'm not going to get claimed anti-Semitic. Look, I'm just saying this is a movement that happened. We should be able to say that it happened. Like, I'm not, saying it's the normal Hasidic Jews or anything. Like, I get it. But also when
it's typically the atheists.
The
atheist Zionists. So.
It's so weird that we can't talk about a whole faction of people like they exist. That's more, I feel that's more discriminatory that we can't talk about them or their history or their livelihood or anything. Like, that's weird. What is wrong? Like, that is crazy to me. They've built a lot of things in America. We should be able to say that. Like, I mean, Kuhn and Loeb, hey, there's a big Mormon contact for you. But when we look at these things, like I said, Joseph Smith was your woo-woo guy. Why has the woo-woo gone out of the church? For a big part, it's because it was meant to go underground. Okay, I don't think it went away. I think it went underground. That's why you, as a Mormon sitting here, maybe listening to this, think I am crazy, because this all sounds insane, right? Like this sex abuse stuff and all this weird stuff. They have a hard time wrapping their heads around it when they're just baking cookies and going, to their, visiting teaching or whatever. See, I get it. Like, when I was in, I had no idea either, and they don't want you to know. So, when we look at this and know that they are a big part of people that are like transhumanists, and I mean, it gets weird. There's a whole LDS Transhumanist League, and there's, like he said, the New World Order. It's spiders. It is spidered so badly. And I do believe Brigham Young took out Joseph. I do 100%. I think he was in on that. I think he led him to the slaughter so that he could take over the church and do exactly what he did with it. And it wasn't good. That's where we get all these banking connects and all this weird stuff happening. Because I don't think Joseph would have done that. I don't.
Yeah, I'm not entirely convinced either. And anyone who is familiar with church history, which, my audience, there probably isn't a whole lot, but you don't even have to dig that deep into church history to see fundamental changes for the worse. I've been trying to find a speech. There was a speech given, I believe, in the 70s at a general conference, and I can't remember who gave the speech, which is why I'm having problems finding it. But the speech was discussing the UN, and this elder specifically labeled the UN as an evil organization, and that the church had no interest in working with them. And now they are partnered hand in hand with the UN. So what changed, other than the fact that there are people who were persuaded away from the fact that the UN is an evil organization, which I wholeheartedly believe that they are.
Yes. Yep. Secret combinations. When we talk about this, I can't think of who the prophet was that was against it, but there was one in the 70s. I think it was it wasn't Kimball. It might've been Benson. because they didn't like him.
Right.
That's why he was the one that was proud to be Mormon,
Right.
and you notice they rebranded and they're like,
Yes.
And so I find that fascinating as well, because I saw in Kimball, everybody thinks he's such a good guy. Look, he was a John Bircher and he was a Rotarian as well as the prophet. I mean, he was very into these secret societies, as was Joseph's progeny. I can't remember his name right now. Not Joseph Fielding, but the next one. I'll look it up. But all of these people sold out. They got into these secret societies. They were tired of being poor and ran out of their homes. And I get it. I do. You got to run stuff with money, but the money they took wasn't good.
Right. Right. Well, and I think that continues to this day. And
it does.
My whole contention with all of this is, why wouldn't the church be corrupted? If I was evil, if I was Satan, that the church, any church, regardless of what it is, would be my number one target, period. And I believe this is why we see such numbers of like child abuse across all different religions, is because Satan has gotten his claws in to these positions. I mean,
well, let me ask you this. Do you know that after the time frame I'm telling you about with the Rothschilds, underneath another person, the Vatican was loaned an extensive amount of money from the LDS Church? And did they pay it back when they got their temple in Rome? I dare say so. So you asked if this was still going on. So there's one prime example. I think that happened in the 90s. So we're talking about every church. Like we said at the beginning, at least I did. I pick on the Mormons because I was one. I know the most about this particular thing because I'm inundated with it, right? Since birth. Does not mean that anyone else gets a pass. The thing that Christianity started to do underneath no religion scared the holy crap out of the religious people, because if they feel that they can be forgiven of their sins and that they're going to go to heaven, and if they read their Bibles and just be good people, they're good, that is not good for their money. Okay. That's messing with their tithing and donations. And that goes for all of them. Look, it's not just one, it's all. When people ask me, well, who is it then? I'm like, yep. And they're like, what do you mean? Yes. And I'm like, yes, the answer is yes. And they're Nazis and they're bad bankers and they're in JFK and they're everywhere. And I know it sounds crazy and insane, but this is the stuff I've found on accident. Half of the time, I'm not even studying that, like with the witchcraft thing, that came out of nowhere. I was just studying who had this woman hung for a spooky Halloween episode, and boom, here it pops up. Like, they are everywhere. And that should scare people because they've been largely underrated. Now, to your point, if I were the devil and I was going to indoctrinate some people and use them as much as I wanted, would I want to be known?
Right.
No,
right.
I don't think so. I would be the nicest person ever. And they are.
And that is the teaching, right? Is that any sort of antichrist is going to be very appealing. That's the whole point.
And these old
that's why it's a temptation.
These older people that believe in this Sabbatai Zevi stuff, sinning to bring about the end of the world and the second coming, they're getting old. They want it to happen. They are pushing this harder than I've ever seen them push because they're all getting old, and it's like they all paid into this system, and now they're like, hey,
they want it to pay off.
Yep. And it's not yet. And so they're forcing the hand. Do they really think that God's hand can be forced? Like, you're so funny.
Right.
Like,
well, and we see this across, we see this across religions. We see this with the Vatican. We see this with what is happening in Israel and Palestine right now. my personal opinion is that these people are part of a death cult. And they are intentionally leading us astray for whatever crazy reason.
The blood in the ground.
Right.
It goes back to the blood. It's what
Right.
happened with Cain and Abel. That's how God knew about Abel, because his blood cried to him from the dirt. That's why
Right.
they're killing everybody.
Right.
You know, it's just sad.
Well, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with you. And I think this is why we saw, the LDS Church push the experimental gene editing, why everyone was told to mask and everything. And I think this is why the problems within the church are just getting worse. What I personally would like to see, as far as the LDS Church goes, or any church for that matter, is I would like to see a genuine church that people could believe in, and with leaders that are actually godly. Because I don't fault anyone for believing whatever they want to believe. I think everyone has the right to choose that, right? I just want to make sure that whoever you're following is not leading humanity to death.
Right.
know?
And at least if you are a person that doesn't know, that you have the right to know what you're practicing. That is
100%.
so important to have
100%.
Informed consent, basically. Like we give it for everything else, and we don't give it for like some of the most important things.
Right.
Like
Right.
that thing that everybody took and there was no pamphlet in the box.
Right. And I think it's part of this is because people have a fundamental misunderstanding of the occult, right? People don't look into these things because it's taught that if you even look into it, then you're practicing it. And that's not how it works. And granted, you shouldn't consume your entire life with this stuff, right? Because there is a certain amount of what you put into your brain hole is bad. However, knowing basic things, knowing how it functions and stuff is totally fine, and it's not going to harm you. Just don't practice it. It's that simple.
Don't call any angels. They're never good.
Right.
Even
They're not angels.
Even Crowley said AWAS lied, and he was a liar, and he wished he never wrote that book, the Book of the Law. The only one he ever said that about.
Right. And I think for anyone who is curious, I think that's the perfect place to start is Crowley, because you can trace back so many things to him directly.
Do you know Crowley specifically wrote about Joseph Smith and Moonchild?
No, I did not.
That is a specific quote, and I will find it before we go.
That is interesting.
Because he knew a magician knows a magician.
Right. Exactly.
He put it in the notes. Yep. It was very strange.
That is incredibly strange.
Yeah, I did a whole show on it, and he said he wrote about the perception of Joseph Smith as an enigmatic figure in his writings, describing visions of the prophet. The account is a piece of analysis from Crowley himself. Joseph Smith obviously didn't write it. Duh.
Right.
And it says, and now all gave way to the most enigmatic figure. I have a hard time with that. Let's see. And filled him with all heaven. And his sphere was primarily a mist, which Lal instinctively recognized as malarious. And she got an impression rather than a vision, an immense muddy river rushing through the swamps. And she saw that this man's brain issued phantoms like pigeons. And there were neither red Indians nor Israelites, yet they had something of each in their bearing. And these poured like smoke out of his head, this little man. In his hand was a book, and he held it over his head. And the book itself was guarded by an angelic figure whose face was extraordinarily stern and not beautiful, but was scattered with wide hands, the wealth of life, children, and corn and gold. That corn is important. You know why. Anyway, and behind all these things was a great multitude, and about them symbolic forms of exile and death and every persecution and hideous laughter of triumphant enemies. All this seemed to weigh upon the little man that created it and thought that he was seeking incarnation for the sake of its forgetfulness. Yet the light in his eyes was pure and noble, that it may have been a new birth and the chance to repair his error. And he specifically mentions in the footnotes that he was talking about Joseph Smith.
Right.
So
interesting.
I'm just saying, like recognizes like.
So
yeah.
to piggyback off that, there's a quote from Brigham Young, and I think we'll start wrapping up here so I don't keep you too long.
Yeah, no,
but
you're good.
This is something I found incredibly interesting, and I found just for this show. I don't want a new custom layout. Hold on. Okay. So this is actually a quote from the Journal of Discourses, chapter 3, 49 through 50. And this is a quote directly from Brigham Young. And the quote is as follows, quote, "Do you not suppose that it is necessary to have devils mixed up with us to make saints of us? We are as yet obliged to have devils in our community. We could not build up the kingdom without them. Many of you know that you cannot get your endowment without the devils being present. Indeed, we cannot make rapid progress without the devils. I know that it frightens the righteous sectarian world to think that we have so many devils with us, so many poor, miserable curses. Bless your souls. We could not prosper in the kingdom of God without them." Brigham Young, Great Salt Lake City, October 6th, 1855.
Wow. You know, the devil shows up in our endowment session, and that's what he's talking about there. The devil comes with a black apron on instead of the green apron that we receive. And he is asked by Adam, "What is that?" And he points to his apron and he says, this is a symbol of my powers and priesthoods. Now, that's fascinating to me because we have to understand that the priesthood was restored per Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery, right?
Right.
So also the devil is the one that tells him to basically put something on, and we all stand and put on our apron. And also he's the one that answers when Adam cries out to the Lord after being thrown out of the garden, which I find fascinating because he's the God of this world, you know? And I do believe that. He also is the God of the airways. He's also, you know, over certain things. And we have to understand the true essence of evil to understand its counterpart. You will never know darkness unless you know light.
Right. 100%.
So, yeah.
And
guard yourselves.
On that note, I think we'll wrap up here. You know, always leave them wanting more. And this gives a good jumping off point for the next time. So any parting words, any kind of bow you want to wrap up on that, and also let people know where they can find you, what you have going on, and the best place for them to go after this.
Awesome. Well, again, I'm Heidi Luv of the Unfiltered Rise. I'm everywhere podcasts are served. You will find most of my work on Spotify because I can't put all of it on YouTube. I only drop once a week there, whereas it's 2 to 3 times a week on Spotify or at unfilteredrisepodcast.com. I have a Patreon if you want a little more of me. I do 2 extra shows a month and I never cut my shows short. I just give you a little bit more if you want that. So you can find me there for those episodes. And I usually bring a slideshow and I do a very complete analysis of things that I find. I usually like to present that so people can see exactly what I'm talking about so that there's no wonder, or you could go find it yourself as well. So you can replicate that. I want to do that because the information isn't mine. I'm not trying to, hold it back. I want it to go so people can find it. I do want to say one last thing about the conspiracy. Witso, he tried, I think, in A Sunlit Land. I bought this book this last week, and he had already had a quote in there that I think got out. It snuck by the publishers, and I thought he was very smart to do this. He basically was talking about how people had a conspiracy at the University of Utah, which he was over the University of Utah. And he said that I thought it strange that no one said anything, because they were talking about leading the young people away from Mormonism, and that once they did that, they would have the state. And it gets so much deeper than this. And I will tell people, I think that possibly every intention was pure of Joseph Smith. I still think he got led astray, because he called upon things and brought them down by his will and not God's, right? Like he forced the hand. Anytime you force something, it's usually magic.
Right.
That's just the way it is. And so when you look at that and you look at everything we presented today, maybe step back and say, am I being led by men that I would trust with my life? Like, is this something that I can, salvage for my own soul? And if it isn't, look into it further to see how you could benefit from sharing your truth and still not go completely atheistic. Like, no offense to anybody atheist, like that's fine if you already went there, but like, it's really damaging to these people coming out of the LDS Church to just shut everything off because they were lied to. It's easy to do, but it's damaging to the soul of many. If you found atheism on your own, that's fine. Like, wherever you are, be there. But I'm just saying, for these other people that are coming out, there is a God and he loves you. It doesn't mean there's no hope. It just means that men are fallible. And every time we put our full trust in that, we're going to be led astray. So, yeah, I think there's a good balance in between. I think you really can find that. You went through literal heaven and hell and came out the other side. You're kind of a representation of this, which is why I'm so excited for our show to come out too, because you explain it. And I think it's easy for people to say, I throw in the towel and I'm just going to go evil or nothing, right? Like no, nothing. But if you were a truly devout person, that's really damaging to your soul. So try not to just throw the baby out with the bathwater just because we're breaking all of this hard stuff. And it's a lot. Trust me. I still sometimes go, there's no way that the Salem witch trials has anything to do with Joseph Smith. Like, I mean, like, right. And there's times where I just have these little freakouts, and my husband's used to it now. He's just like, oh, she's going cuckoo over there. And I mean, it's all in old books, but I will always do my best to put that out for you guys so that you can find those things yourself and just stay close to the Bible, read it. It'll give you, read it and pray about it and figure it out for yourself. I won't even say what it'll do for you. You'll figure it out. So, and to
piggyback off that just a little bit, if it feels wrong, it probably is. And you should pray about it. You should ask about it. And anyone who shuts that down, you're probably onto something. Because as far as seeking truth, there was no such thing as too radical, as long as it's true. And
as long as it's not hurting children, innocent people, or doggies and animals, whatever.
Right. Exactly. So on that note, I would like to thank all of you for joining for another amazing episode of Rise to Liberty. Some of the best things that you can do, if you would like to continue, learning about this stuff, head on over to the Unfiltered Rise podcast, which is going to be down in the episode description along with all of her other links. However, if you want to check out something on my channel that kind of goes along in this same vein, you can actually go over to this interview that I did. Oops, wrong one. There we go. This is an interview I did with Goel of ritual abuse. Oh, geez, I can't remember. I don't know. It's Goel, but the title to the interview is The Shocking Truth About Satanism in Utah Exposed. And it's a 3-hour presentation that we go through and talk about the history of the church and where a lot of this comes from. And it's all based upon the actual doctrine from the church and church history itself. And so this is a much bigger issue than people would like to believe. And like I said, for anyone who wants to be Mormon, all I want is for you to have an actual true church to believe in. And I don't believe that the leaders are leading people in a correct way. And I think it's every Mormon's duty and responsibility to call out bad actors and to get the faith back on the right track. And so, this is why I think people should be learning about this stuff so that the church can be corrected, which was the reason why the church was founded in the first place, because there was no true church. So I think this is every Mormon's opportunity to be able to educate yourselves on the terrible things that are happening and stop being led astray. On that note, if you want to support what I'm doing, head on over to my Ko-Fi. You can go over there. You can donate, do a one-time donation of how much ever you would like, or you can turn it into a monthly thing. You can also head on over to my, let's see here. You can head on over to my Buy Me a Coffee, which is what I would recommend. Buy Me a Coffee is great. And honestly, I need as much caffeine as possible to be able to keep doing these sorts of things. So, and then on top of that, if you would like to get something, you can head on over to risetoliberty.store and go pick up some awesome new merch that I have. In fact, let me just show you guys real quick. I've got these nice new hoodies for the cold weather. It says Rise to Liberty right on the front, and right on the back, it has a big old mind control design. So, I do got larger sizes coming. We go from small to 2X right now, but I do have larger sizes coming. So anybody that needs those, hold on tight and get those. We will be selling these all winter long. We also have long sleeve shirts, t-shirts, mugs, bottles, coffee cups, all sorts of fun things. So other than that, check out my Substack, which is Beware the Mockingbird. And on that note, let's see. Once again, make sure to go check out Heidi's links in the episode description. And until next time, stay free, my friends.